It was raining hard that night. The thunder shook the sky and the mansion stood in silence, except for the quiet sobs of a little girl hiding behind the curtains. Lily pressed her trembling fingers against her bruised cheek, clutching an old phone she had secretly hidden under her pillow. Her stepmother's angry voice still echoed down the hallway. She hesitated for a long moment, but when she saw the blood dripping from her arm, she pressed, "Call." "Dad." Her small voice cracked through tears. "She hit me again. I can't take it anymore." On the other end of the line, Ethan, her father, one of the city's most successful millionaires, froze in his office. The sound of his daughter crying shattered every wall of logic he had built to survive his busy world. Papers fell from his hands. His heart raced as he listened. "Lily, what happened? Who hit you?" "Clara," the girl whispered, shaking uncontrollably. "She said I was useless. She broke my doll, and she hit me because I cried." Ethan stood up so fast his chair fell over. His secretary ran after him as he stormed out of the glass tower. He didn't care about meetings, clients, or money anymore. He only cared about one thing, the voice of his child, broken and afraid. "Stay hidden, sweetheart." "I'm coming home now," he said, already running through the rain to his car. Lily wiped her tears, but her little heart was pounding. She heard footsteps approaching, the cold, sharp click of Clara's high heels. The door creaked open. Clara's voice was suddenly soft, sweet even, like honey laced with poison. "Who are you talking to, Lily?" Lily's throat closed. She hid the phone under her blanket. No one," she stammered. Clara smiled, crouching down to Lily's eye level. Her perfume filled the air, expensive, suffocating. "You wouldn't want your father to think you're lying again, right?" Her nails brushed against Lily's bruised arm, and the girl winced. From the corner of the room, Clara's son, Mason, stood watching with a smirk. "Mom, she's such a crybaby." "Go to your room, Mason," Clara said sweetly, though her eyes stayed locked on Lily like a predator watching its prey. "Your father will be home soon," she added, her tone turning cold. "And when he comes, he'll know what kind of little liar you really are." Outside, the rain grew heavier. Ethan's car sped down the dark road, headlights cutting through the storm. Every second felt like an hour. He could hear Lily's voice replaying in his head, so fragile, so desperate. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, guilt rising in his chest. He had trusted Clara. He had believed she was the perfect woman to help rebuild his family after his wife's death. But now, everything inside him screamed that something was terribly wrong. At that same moment, Clara turned off the lights in Lily's room, leaving the girl in the dark, shaking. Lily curled up under her blanket, whispering to herself, "Daddy, please come home fast." And far away, Ethan whispered into the storm, "I'm coming, baby. I promise." But when he finally arrived home and opened the door, what he saw made his blood run cold. The night was long and heavy, but for Lily, sleep never came. She sat up in her little bed, hugging a worn-out teddy bear with one missing eye. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her stepmother's hand flying toward her face, the sharp sting, the cruel voice telling her she was worthless. To stop the pain, Lily let her mind drift back to the days when everything still felt safe, back to her mother. In her memory, the kitchen was warm and smelled like cinnamon. Her mother's laugh was soft and bright. Lily would sit on the counter, swinging her small legs while her mother baked cookies. "You have your father's eyes," her mother used to say, brushing flour off her nose. "And his stubborn heart. Don't ever stop believing in kindness, no matter what happens." Those words echoed now, fragile but alive inside her. She whispered them under her breath like a prayer, as if her mother could still hear her. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the silence inside the house was worse. Every creak of the floor made her heart skip. Down the hallway, Clara's voice murmured sweetly to Ethan on the phone. "She's been acting strange lately," she lied smoothly. "Maybe she needs therapy." "I'm worried about her," Ethan, still driving through the storm, promised they would talk in the morning. Clara smiled in the dark. Meanwhile, Grace, the housekeeper, stood in the kitchen washing dishes. She had worked for the family since before Lily was born. She noticed the blood-stained napkin in the trash and froze. Her old heart clenched in fear. "Dear Lord," she whispered, looking toward Lily's room. She knew what Clara was capable of, but every time she spoke up, Clara threatened to fire her. Grace had her own sick husband to care for. She couldn't afford to lose the job. Still, something about tonight felt different. She dried her hands and quietly walked upstairs. The door to Lily's room was slightly open. Through the crack, she saw the little girl sitting there, clutching the teddy bear, eyes red and swollen. Grace's throat tightened. "Lily, sweetheart, are you okay?" she whispered. Lily shook her head. Her voice came out like a breath. "She said I shouldn't tell Dad, but I did." Grace knelt beside her, her wrinkled hand brushing the girl's hair away. "You did the right thing, honey. Your father loves you." "Do you really think he'll believe me?" Lily asked, tears glistening on her cheeks. Grace hesitated. "He will," she said softly, though her eyes told another story. Then Grace saw the bruises, dark purple marks running down Lily's arm and shoulder. She covered her mouth, holding back a gasp. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone, but she stopped halfway. If Clara found out, she'd lose everything. In that moment, Lily looked up and gave a small, broken smile. "Mom said love always wins." I think she was wrong. Grace felt her heart break. She looked at the girl and whispered, "No, sweetheart." She wasn't wrong. Sometimes love just takes longer to fight back. Downstairs, the front gate creaked open. The sound of a car door slamming echoed through the still air. Ethan had finally come home, but he wasn't prepared for the story Clara was about to tell. The grand mansion looked calm when Ethan walked in. The marble floors gleamed, and soft music played from the living room speakers. Clara stood near the staircase, her silk robe draped perfectly, her face painted with an expression of concern and sadness. "Oh, Ethan," she gasped, running to him, her eyes filling with tears that looked almost too perfect. "Thank God you're home." I was so scared Ethan's coat dripped rain onto the floor as he stepped inside. "Where's Lily?" he demanded, his voice rough. "She called me crying. She said you hurt her." Clara froze for half a second, then let out a fragile laugh. "Oh, sweetheart," she said softly, cupping his face. "She's confused again. You know how children are when they feel neglected. She had a little accident, that's all." "An accident?" Ethan's brow furrowed. "She said you hit her." Clara sighed, looking down, playing the role of a heartbroken stepmother. "I would never hurt her, Ethan." She tripped over Mason's toy. I tried to help her, but she started screaming. She said she wanted her mother. Then she called you. Her voice cracked perfectly, a performance fit for a stage. "I know she misses her mom, but she needs help, Ethan. Professional help." Behind the wall, Lily listened, her small hands gripping the railing. Her chest ached with betrayal. Why was her father listening? Why wasn't he running to her? Clara guided Ethan to the couch. "Sit, please. You've had such a long day." She poured him a drink, her movements slow, graceful, practiced. "You're under so much pressure, darling. You shouldn't have to deal with drama at home." Ethan took the glass, his hands shaking slightly. His mind was spinning. He wanted to believe Clara. She had always been patient, elegant, caring. But Lily's voice, that voice of pure terror, wouldn't leave his head. "Can I see her?" he asked finally. "Of course," Clara said quickly, smiling through her tears. "But promise me you'll stay calm." She's been saying strange things lately, talking to pictures, pretending her mother's still alive. "I don't want you to scare her." Ethan nodded numbly and climbed the stairs. The hallway was quiet except for the faint ticking of the clock. When he opened Lily's door, the sight made his heart twist. His little girl sat on the bed, head bowed, her small shoulders shaking. "Hey, sweetheart," he said softly, kneeling beside her. "It's okay. Daddy's here." Lily looked up, eyes swollen, lips trembling. "You believe me, right?" she whispered. Before Ethan could answer, Clara appeared at the doorway, her smile gentle but her eyes sharp as glass. "There you are, my little angel," she said sweetly. "Tell your father what really happened." Lily's fingers tightened around her teddy bear. Her voice cracked. "She's lying." Ethan looked between them, his daughter trembling, his wife crying, his mind trapped between truth and lies. And as the tension thickened in the room, Clara's sweet voice sliced through the air like a knife. "If you keep making up stories, Lily, Daddy might start thinking you're sick." Ethan froze. And for the first time, He saw something dark flicker behind Clara's perfect smile. The next morning, sunlight poured through the tall glass windows of the mansion, but it didn't feel warm. The air was heavy, filled with quiet tension. Ethan had left early for work after promising to talk things out later that night. Clara kissed him goodbye, waving sweetly as his car disappeared through the gates. Then, the moment the engine noise faded, her smile vanished. "Breakfast, Lily," Clara said sharply, her voice cutting through the silence. Lily hurried to the kitchen, trying to keep her head down. Her bruises were hidden under a long-sleeved sweater. Grace placed a plate of toast in front of her and gave her a sympathetic look. "Eat slowly, sweetheart," she whispered. Before Lily could take a bite, Mason walked in, Clara's 10-year-old son, smirking like he owned the place. "Mom, she's sitting in my chair again," he said, glaring at Lily. Clara didn't even look up from her phone. "Lily, move," she ordered. Lily quietly stood and switched chairs. Mason laughed. "You really think you're something just because my mom married your dad?" He grabbed her toast and bit into it. "You don't belong here." Lily looked down, her voice trembling. "I didn't take your chair on purpose." "Oh, stop crying already," Mason snapped, pushing her shoulder. She stumbled, almost falling. Clara looked up then, but instead of scolding Mason, she smiled faintly. "Mason, sweetie, be nice. We don't want your stepfather thinking we're bullies." Mason grinned, knowing exactly what that meant, permission hidden in pretty words. He leaned closer to Lily and whispered, "When Dad's gone, Mom says we can do whatever we want." Grace clenched her hands into fists as she watched from the counter. She wanted to scream, to stop it, but fear kept her quiet. Clara had already threatened her once. "Mind your own business, or you'll be out on the streets," she'd said coldly. Later that day, Lily sat alone in the garden. The flowers her mother once planted were gone, replaced with roses Clara had imported from France. Their beauty felt fake, sharp like glass. Mason appeared again, holding Lily's old sketchbook, the one filled with drawings of her and her late mother. "Give it back," Lily pleaded, standing up. He flipped through it carelessly. "These are ugly. You draw like a baby." "Stop it," she shouted, lunging for the book. Mason tore one page and threw it into the fountain. "Oops," he said, laughing. "Guess your mom's gone forever now." Lily's knees gave out as she stared at the soaked paper floating away. Her breath came in shallow gasps. "Why are you so mean?" she whispered. Mason shrugged. "Because Mom says you ruin everything." Behind a window, Clara watched, sipping her coffee, her red lips curving into a small, satisfied smile. Grace, standing beside her, could barely hide her disgust. "You're letting him do this?" she asked quietly. Clara turned to her, eyes cold. "Children learn what they see, Grace. Now get back to work." Grace looked toward the garden, where Lily knelt crying beside the fountain, and she knew something inside that house was about to break. That night, Clara would make sure it did, this time in front of everyone. The city lights shimmered outside the tall glass of the downtown hotel. Inside, Clara sat in the dim glow of a lamp, her red lipstick perfect, a glass of wine in hand. Across from her sat Kevin, Ethan's personal assistant, a man in his early 30s with slick hair and a nervous energy that barely hid his ambition. "You're playing a dangerous game, Clara," Kevin murmured, stirring his drink. "If Ethan finds out—" "He won't," she interrupted smoothly, crossing her legs. "He believes every word I say. He thinks Lily is just a poor, confused child." "It's pathetic," Kevin leaned forward, lowering his voice. "So what now? You already have the man, the house, the money. What else do you want?" Clara's smile sharpened. "Everything." She swirled her wine. "As long as that little girl is here, Ethan will never be fully mine. He feels guilty every time he looks at her, and that guilt keeps him from giving me control." Kevin frowned. "Control of what?" "The company shares. The trust funds. His empire," she said simply. "If Lily disappears, or better yet, if Ethan believes she's mentally unstable, the rest becomes mine. And you, Kevin, you'll get your promotion. We both win." He hesitated. "You're talking about a child." Clara's tone dropped to a whisper. "A child who stands in the way of everything I've worked for. Don't grow a conscience now." Kevin looked away, but his silence was enough for Clara to continue. She pulled out a small envelope and slid it across the table. Inside were photos, staged moments she'd arranged, spilled food, broken glass, a cut on Mason's arm she'd told him to fake. "Evidence," she said. "Enough to convince Ethan that Lily needs to be sent away for therapy." Somewhere far, Kevin flipped through the photos. "You're cruel, Clara." "Cruel?" She laughed softly. "No, strategic. There's a difference." Meanwhile, at the mansion, Grace was cleaning Ethan's office when she accidentally knocked over a drawer. A folder spilled open, documents about Ethan's estate, Clara's name newly added as co-signer. Her heart skipped. Something about it didn't feel right. She tucked the papers back quickly, afraid someone might see. Upstairs, Lily sat on her bed, drawing quietly, trying to forget the day's cruelty. Her arms still ached from Mason's shove. Outside her door, she heard Clara's voice on the phone, low and sharp. "Yes, the therapist is ready. We'll tell Ethan it's for her own good." Lily froze. Her chest tightened as she realized they were talking about her. Tears welled up again, but she bit her lip to stay silent. Back at the hotel, Kevin looked at Clara one last time. "If this goes wrong, we're both finished." Clara leaned forward, her voice a whisper that dripped with venom. "It won't go wrong." By the time Ethan realizes what's happening, Lily will be out of his life for good. She stood, slipped her coat on, and left him sitting there, staring into his drink. The storm outside was just beginning again, thunder rumbling over the city. And at that very moment, in her small room, Lily made a promise to herself. She would not let them win. The night came again with a heavy sky and the smell of rain. Lightning flashed across the windows of the mansion as Lily sat on the cold floor of her room, her knees pulled tight to her chest. She hadn't eaten all day. Her stomach hurt, but not as much as her heart. She could hear Clara laughing downstairs, her voice floating up from the living room like poison in the air. Earlier that evening, Clara had slapped her again, this time for accidentally spilling juice on Mason's new shirt. The sting still burned across her cheek. Grace had tried to interfere, but Clara screamed at her until she backed away. "You're just the help," Clara had shouted. "Keep your mouth shut or pack your bags." Now, Lily sat shaking, staring at the small phone hidden under her pillow. She had tried to be brave. She had tried to believe her father would protect her. But every time Clara smiled at him, he forgot everything. The lies were too perfect. Downstairs, Clara poured herself another glass of wine and picked up her phone. "Yes, tomorrow morning," she told someone on the other end. "The therapist will meet her at the hospital. I'll convince Ethan to sign the papers. He trusts me completely." Lily's eyes widened. She pressed her ear to the door, trembling. "Send her away?" she whispered. She waited until the house grew quiet. Then, with shaking hands, she took out her phone and scrolled to her father's number. Her fingers hovered over the call button. She could almost hear her mother's voice in her mind. "When you're scared, tell the truth, baby." Even if it hurts, Lily pressed call. "Hello?" Ethan's voice came through, groggy but warm. It was past midnight. "Dad," her voice cracked. "Please come home. She's going to send me away. Please. She said you'll sign papers to get rid of me." Ethan sat up in bed, heart pounding. "Lily, what are you talking about? Who's sending you away?" "Clara," she whispered, choking back tears. "She said I'm sick." "But I'm not, Dad. I'm not." "Calm down, sweetheart," Ethan said, already throwing on his jacket. "Where's Grace?" "She tried to help me, but Clara yelled at her." "I'm scared." He was out the door before she could finish. Rain poured as he started the car, tires screeching onto the road. "Listen to me, Lily," he said, gripping the phone tight. "Lock your door. Stay in your room. I'll be there soon. I love you, Daddy," she whispered. "I love you too, baby. Just hold on." The call ended as thunder roared. Lily ran to her door and turned the lock, but seconds later she heard footsteps, Clara's. The door rattled under heavy knocks. "Lily, open this door right now," Clara shouted, her voice low and furious. Lily backed away, tears flooding her eyes. "Daddy's coming," she whispered, clutching her teddy bear. Outside, Ethan's car sped through the storm, wipers fighting the rain, headlights slicing the darkness. His pulse raced with fear and guilt. "Just hold on," he kept repeating. But as he neared the mansion gates, a black car he didn't recognize pulled out of the driveway. He slammed on the brakes, heart stopping for a second. Inside that car, hidden behind tinted windows, was someone he never expected to see leaving his home. The gates screeched open as Ethan's car skidded into the driveway, the rain hammering against the windshield like 1,000 needles. His chest felt tight, his hands gripping the wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. He barely noticed the black sedan that had passed him moments earlier. All he could think about was Lily's voice on the phone, the fear, the desperation. He burst through the front door, water dripping from his coat. "Lily!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the vast marble halls. "Lily, where are you?" The house was eerily quiet. The only sound came from the living room, where Clara sat on the couch in her satin robe, pretending to cry. Her makeup was slightly smeared, her hair disheveled in a carefully arranged chaos. "Ethan," she gasped, rushing toward him. "Thank God you're here." He grabbed her by the shoulders. "Where's Lily?" Clara's lips trembled. I tried to help her," she said between fake sobs. "She had another episode." She locked herself in her room, screaming that I was going to hurt her. "I swear, Ethan, I didn't do anything." He pushed past her, ignoring the performance. "Lily!" he shouted again, running up the stairs. He pounded on her door. "Sweetheart, it's Daddy." "Open up." No answer. He tried the handle. It turned easily. The door wasn't locked. Inside, the room was a mess. The curtains were half torn, her blanket thrown on the floor. A broken picture frame lay near the bed, the photo of Lily and her late mother shattered into pieces. "Lily?" he whispered, panic rising. Behind him, Clara appeared at the doorway, clutching a small tablet in her hand. "She ran away," she said quietly. "I didn't want to tell you, but she's been unstable lately. I even set up a camera outside her room. Look, she was hurting herself." Ethan turned to her sharply. "What are you talking about?" She played the video. On the screen, a shaky clip showed Lily crying, hitting the wall, her voice muffled. "She said voices were talking to her," Clara added, her tone sorrowful. "I think she needs real help." Ethan stared at the footage, his mind spinning. The timestamp was from earlier that evening. "Where did you get this?" he demanded. Clara swallowed hard. "From the security cameras. I didn't want you to see it, but now you understand. She needs treatment before she hurts herself again." He pressed his palms against his temples. The exhaustion, the confusion, the storm outside, it all blurred together. Could it be true? Could his little girl really be losing her mind? Then he saw it. Something small, but wrong. The reflection in the video's window showed Clara's silhouette behind Lily, hand raised, before the clip abruptly cut off. His stomach dropped. "Why is that part missing?" he asked, his voice low. Clara's eyes flickered for half a second before she forced a shaky smile. "It must be a glitch." But Ethan had stopped listening. He felt it now, the cold truth pressing in from every side. Something was being hidden from him. He turned toward the door. "I'm finding my daughter," he said quietly. Clara's mask slipped for the first time. "Ethan, don't you dare walk away from me." He didn't look back, because from somewhere deep in the house, a faint cry echoed, and it sounded just like Lily. The house felt haunted that morning. Rain still clung to the windows, gray light spilling through the glass. Ethan had stayed up all night searching the grounds, calling Lily's name until his voice broke, but there was no sign of her, only silence. Downstairs, Clara sat at the breakfast table, perfectly composed, sipping her coffee as if nothing had happened. Her robe was now replaced by a crisp white blouse and diamond earrings. "You need to rest," she told Ethan softly. "You're exhausted." "The police said they'll handle the search." Ethan's eyes were bloodshot. "She wouldn't run away." "Not Lily. She's terrified of the dark." Clara reached for his hand across the table. "Sweetheart, children act out when they're confused. She needs help. We both know that." Her words sounded smooth, rehearsed, like a lullaby laced with poison. Grace stood in the corner, drying dishes that didn't need drying, her heart pounding in her chest. She had overheard everything. The lies, the manipulation, the fake concern. Every word made her stomach twist. She had worked for Ethan's family for over 10 years. She had held Lily as a baby. And now, watching Clara's calm performance, she felt something inside her snap. She waited until Ethan went upstairs to take a call. Then she turned to Clara. "You're lying," Grace said quietly. Clara looked up, amused. "Excuse me?" "I said you're lying. That little girl didn't run away. You did something to her." Clara stood slowly, her heels clicking against the marble. "Careful, Grace. You're already walking on thin ice." "I don't care anymore," Grace said, trembling but firm. "I saw the bruises. I heard the screams. You can fool Mr. Ethan, but not me." Clara's smile vanished. "Do you really think anyone would believe a maid over me? I can replace you in an hour." "Maybe," Grace said, meeting her eyes. "But not before I tell him what I know." Clara's voice dropped to a hiss. "You'll regret that." But Grace didn't back down. She walked upstairs, ignoring Clara's glare, and entered Lily's room. Everything was still a mess. As she began tidying, she noticed something small behind the bed, a silver USB drive. She picked it up, frowning. Lily had no computer. She realized it must have fallen from Clara's purse during the chaos last night. Grace's hands shook as she hid the USB inside her apron. She didn't know what was on it, but something told her it mattered. A few hours later, Clara fired her. "Pack your things," she said coldly. "Your services are no longer required." Grace nodded calmly. "Of course, ma'am." She left the mansion without another word, the USB pressed tightly in her hand. Her heart broke knowing she was leaving Lily behind, but she had a plan. She would go to the police, or better yet, to Ethan himself, once she had proof. As her old car rattled down the driveway, she glanced at the house one last time. Through the upstairs window, she could have sworn she saw a flicker of movement, like a small hand tapping on the glass. She gasped. "Lily?" she whispered. The light went out, and in that instant, Grace knew the child hadn't run away at all. She was still inside that house. Night fell again, darker than before. The mansion was silent except for the soft ticking of the clock in the hallway. Ethan sat alone in his study, staring blankly at the glass of whiskey in his hand. The police search had gone nowhere. They said Lily probably ran away due to stress. But Ethan's heart refused to believe that. His daughter wouldn't just disappear, not without a reason. Clara entered the room quietly, her perfume preceding her. "You haven't slept in 2 days," she murmured, gently touching his shoulder. "You need to let the police handle this." He brushed her hand away. "Don't tell me to rest." "My daughter is missing." Clara sighed, pretending to hold back tears. "I loved her too, Ethan. You're not the only one hurting." Ethan turned sharply, eyes filled with fury. "Don't you dare say you loved her. If you did, she wouldn't have been terrified to be alone with you." Clara's expression hardened for a split second before she forced a smile. "You're grieving. You don't mean that." But Ethan meant every word. Something inside him had changed. The doubt that had been whispering in his mind was now screaming. He picked up his phone and called Grace, but the number didn't go through. "Disconnected," he muttered. Clara's eyes flickered nervously. "Why are you calling her?" "Because she cared about Lily." "Unlike you," he stormed out of the room, heading upstairs toward Lily's bedroom again. When he opened the door, the air felt heavy, thick with silence. He looked around, hoping for any clue. Then he noticed something. The small attic hatch above the wardrobe was slightly open. He climbed on a chair and pulled it down. Dust fell from the ceiling as he peeked inside. Nothing, just darkness. But beneath the floorboard, faintly, he thought he heard something. A soft sound, like breathing or crying. He froze. "Lily?" No answer, just silence. Downstairs, Clara watched from the shadows, her hand gripping her phone tightly. Her voice was low when she spoke into it. "You told me it was handled." On the other end, Kevin's voice crackled. "Relax. She's safe. I dropped her off at the old caretaker's cabin." No one goes there anymore. She won't get far. Clara exhaled, her smile returning. Good. Make sure she stays there until I decide what happens next. Kevin hesitated. You're not planning to… Just do what I said, she snapped. Meanwhile, miles away, the little cabin sat deep in the woods, surrounded by rain and mist. Inside, Lily huddled in a corner, shivering beneath a thin blanket. Her wrists were tied, but she wasn't alone. An older woman, a stranger, sat across from her, knitting silently. Where am I? Lily asked through tears. Somewhere safe, the woman said coldly. Your stepmother said your father doesn't want you anymore. Lily's small voice cracked. That's not true. The woman looked at her with tired eyes. Then pray he finds you before it's too late. Back at the mansion, Ethan stared out the window as thunder rolled. His gut screamed that something terrible was happening, and deep in the woods, Lily's faint cry was swallowed by the storm. The rain had turned the dirt road into a river of mud. Every branch seemed to whisper secrets in the dark. Inside the old caretaker's cabin, Lily huddled near a dying fire, her little hands trembling from the cold. The ropes around her wrists had loosened slightly, but she was too weak to fight. Her stomach growled, and her lips were cracked from thirst. The woman who watched over her, thin, gray-haired, with hollow eyes, sat silently in a rocking chair. Her name was Agnes. She had once worked for the family years ago, back when Ethan's first wife was still alive. But Clara had found her, paid her, and convinced her to take care of the problem quietly. You'll let me go, right? Lily whispered, voice trembling. Agnes didn't look at her. I just follow orders, child. You'll stay here until they say otherwise. Lily swallowed hard, tears welling in her eyes. My dad's coming for me, she said softly, clutching her teddy bear. He promised. Agnes sighed, her hands pausing mid-knit. For a moment, her eyes softened. Your father used to be a good man, she murmured. I remember him before the money changed everything. Lily frowned. He's still good? Agnes said nothing. The fire flickered out completely, leaving them in near darkness. Outside, thunder cracked, shaking the windows. Lily shivered. Every sound felt like a monster waiting to grab her. But then, through the storm, she heard something. A faint tapping. Her heart raced. She looked toward the window. The glass was fogged, but she could see a faint silhouette, a man's figure in the rain. Dad? She whispered. Agnes stood quickly, eyes wide. What did you say? Before Lily could answer, the sound vanished. When she looked again, the window was empty. Agnes cursed under her breath and pulled the curtain shut. You didn't see anyone, she said harshly. Go to sleep. But Lily couldn't. She waited until Agnes began snoring softly in her chair. Then, slowly, she crawled toward the back wall where a small window sat cracked open. She squeezed her hands through the ropes, biting her lip as the skin tore. Finally, the last knot gave way. She pushed the window open just enough to slip through. The cold rain hit her face like knives, but she didn't care. She ran barefoot into the woods, her tiny body swallowed by the night. Branches scratched her arms, mud soaked her clothes, but she kept running. Daddy! She screamed into the wind. Daddy, please! Back at the mansion, Ethan was pacing his study when his phone buzzed, a private message from an unknown number. Attached was a single photo. It showed Lily, pale and frightened, sitting inside a cabin. Ethan's heart stopped. He zoomed in on the image. Behind her, carved faintly into the wooden wall, were the words, Caretaker's Cabin. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed his car keys, heart pounding like thunder in his chest. But in the woods, Lily tripped and fell, twisting her ankle. The pain was sharp, unbearable. She looked behind her. 2 headlights appeared through the trees. For a brief moment, hope flared in her chest. Daddy? Then she saw the figure stepping out of the car. It wasn't her father. It was Kevin. The storm had finally eased, leaving behind a damp, gray morning. Grace sat in her small apartment on the edge of town, staring at the silver USB drive on the table. She hadn't slept since Clara fired her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Lily's bruised face and those terrified eyes staring out the window. Something inside Grace told her the child was still alive, and she couldn't ignore it anymore. Her hands trembled as she plugged the USB into her old laptop. The screen flickered, then opened to a folder labeled Therapy Files. Inside were dozens of videos. She clicked one. The image showed Clara standing in Lily's room, whispering harshly, "If you tell him again, I'll make sure he never sees you." Lily's small voice whimpered in the background. Grace covered her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Oh, dear Lord," she whispered. The truth was worse than she imagined. She copied the files onto a flash drive, stuffed it into her coat pocket, and grabbed her keys. She had to find Ethan before Clara destroyed everything. Meanwhile, far from the city in the middle of the drenched forest, Kevin dragged Lily back toward the cabin. She fought weakly, crying out for her father. "Please, don't. My dad's coming." Kevin's face was pale, guilt flickering in his eyes. "Stop yelling, kid. You'll just make it worse for both of us." "You're hurting me," she screamed, twisting free for a second. She stumbled, falling hard into the mud. Kevin hesitated. "Listen, I don't want to hurt you," he said, his voice low. "I just have to make sure you stay here. Your stepmother, she's paying me a lot, okay?" That's all. Lily looked up at him, rain streaming down her face. "Money doesn't make you good," she whispered. Those words hit him like a knife. He looked away, ashamed. But before he could speak, a pair of headlights appeared down the dirt road. He panicked, grabbed Lily's arm again, and shoved her toward the cabin. "Stay quiet!" Back in the city, Grace burst through the doors of Ethan's company headquarters, soaking wet and shaking. The receptionist tried to stop her, but she shouted, "It's about Lily!" "Please, I need to see Mr. Ethan Carter right now." Moments later, Ethan appeared, eyes sunken from exhaustion. "Grace?" She held up the flash drive. "She's alive, Ethan. I have proof. Clara's behind everything." He stared at her, stunned. "What did you say?" "Lily didn't run away." Clara set it all up. Ethan grabbed her shoulders. "Where is she?" Grace shook her head. "I don't know. But look." She opened her laptop, showing him the video. Clara's cruel voice filled the room. "You'll go to that hospital whether you like it or not, and if you ever tell your father, I'll make you disappear." Ethan's face turned white. His chest heaved with rage and disbelief. That cabin, the caretaker's cabin. He remembered the old family property miles from town, the same words carved on the wall in the photo he'd received. He turned to his driver. "Get the car." "Now!" Grace grabbed his arm. "Ethan, she's in danger. You have to hurry." He didn't answer. His eyes were already burning with one single thought, his daughter. And as the car roared out of the city, neither of them knew Clara was already one step ahead. Ethan's car tore through the winding forest road, headlights slicing through the fog. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel, Grace sitting beside him clutching the flash drive like it was life itself. The windshield wipers fought against the rain, but his mind was louder than the storm. Every word from the video replayed in his head, Clara's voice threatening his daughter, Lily's tiny sobs in the background. "How could I not see it?" he muttered, almost to himself. "I brought that monster into my home." Grace looked at him with quiet sorrow. "You trusted her because you wanted to believe she loved Lily. But now you know the truth. That woman doesn't love anyone." He pressed harder on the gas pedal. "She's not going to get away with this." Back at the mansion, Clara stood in her dressing room, calm as ever, carefully selecting a diamond necklace. Kevin hadn't called her back in hours, and that made her nervous. She dialed his number again. No answer. Her lips tightened. "Don't you dare mess this up," she whispered to herself. Her phone buzzed with a message. When she opened it, her breath caught. It was a picture of Lily, tied up, crying, taken from inside the cabin. Kevin had sent it hours earlier, but below the image was another text she hadn't noticed until now. "He knows. He's coming." Clara's hand trembled. She dropped the phone, shattering the screen. "No?" she whispered. "No, no, no." Out on the road, Ethan's car finally turned down the narrow path that led to the caretaker's cabin. The trees loomed over them like dark sentinels. Grace's voice was shaky. "Ethan, be careful. If she sent someone with Lily—" "I'm not waiting," he snapped, slamming the brakes. The car skidded to a stop. He He jumped out into the rain before Grace could stop him. The cabin stood a few yards away, its windows glowing faintly. His heart pounded as he approached, mud splashing under his feet. Then he heard it, a scream. "Daddy!" The sound shattered the night. Ethan ran faster, kicked the door open with all his strength. Inside, Kevin spun around, eyes wide. Lily was on the floor, her hands free now but her face pale with fear. "Step away from her," Ethan roared. Kevin lifted his hands. "It's not what you think." Ethan lunged, grabbing him by the collar and slamming him against the wall. "Where is Clara?" Kevin's breath came fast. She told me to keep her here until morning. I swear, I didn't mean to hurt her." Grace appeared in the doorway, soaked and shaking. "Ethan!" "Police are on their way." Lily crawled into her father's arms, sobbing. "I knew you'd come, Daddy. I knew it." He held her tight, his tears mixing with the rain. "I'll never leave you again." "I promise." Kevin tried to slip past them, but Grace blocked the door. "You're not going anywhere." Outside, sirens began to wail in the distance, growing louder by the second. Ethan turned to Kevin one last time, his voice low and cold. "You're going to tell the police everything." Kevin's face paled. "You don't understand. Clara's not done yet." Because even as the sirens closed in, Clara was already driving toward the cabin with something deadly in her trunk. The police lights painted the trees red and blue, flashing through the heavy fog. Officers surrounded the cabin, their radios crackling with static. Ethan stood outside, soaked to the bone, clutching Lily tightly as she shivered in his arms. Grace stood beside them, talking to one of the officers, explaining everything she knew. Kevin sat handcuffed in the back of a patrol car, his head bowed, shame heavy on his face. For the first time in days, Ethan felt a fragile sense of relief. Lily was alive. She was safe. But that peace shattered the moment he saw headlights approaching through the mist. Clara's sleek black car rolled to a stop beside the police vehicles. She stepped out slowly, her heels sinking into the mud, her white coat pristine despite the storm. Her expression was perfectly calm, her voice smooth as silk. "Oh, thank God," she said, pretending to cry as she ran toward Ethan. "You found her." "I was terrified something awful happened." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Don't," he said sharply. Clara froze mid-step, blinking in feigned confusion. "Ethan, what are you talking about?" The police captain stepped forward. "Mrs. Carter, we'll need to ask you a few questions. There are inconsistencies in the reports you gave us." "Inconsistencies?" she repeated with a soft, nervous laugh. "Surely there's a misunderstanding." "I've been working with you all night." Ethan handed the officer the flash drive Grace had given him. "You'll find every lie she's told on there," he said coldly. Clara's face drained of color. "What is that?" "Proof," Ethan said, "of what you did to Lily." The officer took the drive and nodded to his team. Two of them escorted Clara toward the patrol car. She jerked her arm away, her calm mask cracking for the first time. "This is ridiculous." "That maid, she forged everything. She's jealous." Grace stepped forward, trembling but resolute. "Jealous of what?" "Watching you hurt that child?" Clara's voice turned sharp, venomous. "You're just a bitter old woman. You think anyone will believe you over me?" The police captain interrupted. "Mrs. Carter, that's enough." But Clara wasn't done. Her eyes turned cold as she glared at Ethan. "You think you can ruin me?" she hissed. "You have no idea what I've done for you. Everything you have, the company, the deals, the partners, those are my connections. You destroy me, you destroy yourself." Ethan looked at her with a mix of anger and pity. "You destroyed yourself, Clara." "The moment you touched my daughter." The officers led her toward the car, but she suddenly twisted free, turning to Lily. "You little brat!" she screamed. "You ruined everything!" Ethan stepped in front of his daughter, his voice steel. "If you take one more step, I'll forget the police are here." Clara's chest heaved, her perfect composure gone. She looked around, realizing the cameras, the flashing lights, the witnesses. All eyes were on her. The world she built from lies was collapsing. As she was pushed into the back seat, she gave one last icy smile. "This isn't over," she whispered. Ethan turned away, holding Lily close. "Yes, it is." But as the police car pulled away, Grace noticed Clara slip something small from her sleeve, a hidden phone, and start to text. Someone else was still out there. 2 weeks later, the courtroom buzzed with reporters, cameras flashing like lightning. The case had become a national sensation. Millionaire's wife accused of child abuse and fraud. The public wanted justice, and the world wanted to see the woman who had fooled everyone. Clara sat at the defendant's table in a sleek black dress, her hair perfectly styled, her face emotionless. Even in chains, she looked like she was performing. Across the room, Ethan sat with Lily beside him. The little girl wore a pale blue dress and held her teddy bear tightly, her legs barely reaching the floor. Grace sat behind them, offering quiet support. The prosecutor began his statement. "This is not merely a case of abuse. It is a case of betrayal, manipulation, and greed." The defendant, Mrs. Clara Carter, sought to remove a child from her own father's life to gain control of his fortune. Clara smiled faintly, as if the entire thing were beneath her. When Ethan was called to the stand, he spoke clearly, his voice filled with a quiet pain that silenced the room. "I thought she was saving me," he said. "After my wife died, Clara appeared kind, understanding. I believed she loved my daughter. But love doesn't lie. Love doesn't hit. And love doesn't steal." The prosecutor nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. That will be all." Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The prosecution calls Lily Carter. The courtroom fell silent as the 9-year-old girl stood and walked slowly to the witness stand. Her small hands trembled as she placed them on the Bible. "I promise to tell the truth," she whispered. The prosecutor smiled gently. "Lily, can you tell us what happened?" Lily's voice was soft, almost breaking. She said my mom didn't love me anymore. She said my dad didn't want me. When I cried, she hit me. Sometimes Mason helped her. I tried to tell Dad, but she told him I was crazy." Tears filled her eyes. "I just wanted my family back." Several people in the audience wiped their eyes. Even one of the officers looked down, his throat tight. When it was Clara's lawyer's turn to question her, he tried to twist the story. "Lily, isn't it true that you sometimes hurt yourself when you were upset?" Lily frowned. "No, she made me look crazy. She said if I didn't stop crying, she'd send me away." From the defense table, Clara leaned forward. She hissed under her breath. The judge slammed the gavel. "Mrs. Carter, you will remain silent or be removed from the court." Ethan reached out and took Lily's hand. She looked at him and whispered into the microphone, her voice trembling but strong. "I just wanted my dad to believe me." The room fell utterly quiet. Ethan's eyes filled with tears as he nodded. "I believe you now, sweetheart." Clara's face twisted in rage as the jury stared at her. For the first time, she looked powerless, trapped by her own lies. And when the judge finally said, "The court finds Clara Carter guilty on all counts," the sound of applause broke out across the room. But even as she was led away, Clara smiled faintly. "You think this is the end?" she whispered. "You have no idea what I set in motion." The verdict echoed in the courtroom like thunder. "Guilty on all counts." Clara's face went pale, her perfect mask cracking at last. As the guards took her by the arms, the cameras flashed wildly, capturing every second of her downfall. The woman who once smiled for magazine covers and charity galas was now just another criminal in handcuffs. Ethan held Lily close, his tears falling freely. Grace placed a trembling hand on his shoulder. For the first time in years, the air around them felt lighter, like the poison had finally lifted. But deep down, Ethan knew the story wasn't finished, not yet. Outside, reporters crowded around, shouting questions. "Mr. Carter, what's next for your family? Will you press charges against Kevin, too?" Ethan shielded Lily with his coat and pushed through the crowd. "No more statements," he said firmly. I just want peace for my daughter." Meanwhile, at the county jail, Clara sat in her holding cell, staring at the wall. Her hair was messy now, her makeup gone. Across from her, Kevin was being led into another cell, his wrists cuffed, his eyes full of regret. "You," she spat. "You ruined everything." Kevin gave a bitter laugh. "I ruined everything? You set me up, Clara. You said no one would get hurt, that it was just about money." Clara's eyes blazed. "You were supposed to keep that girl quiet." Kevin slammed his fists against the bars. "She's a kid." "I couldn't do it anymore." Clara leaned closer, her voice low and venomous. "You think they'll go easy on you? You think you'll ever be free after what we did?" He met her gaze, unflinching now. "At least I told the truth." "That's more than you'll ever do." Guards separated them, dragging Kevin down the hall. He didn't look back. Clara sank onto the bench, shaking with fury. Her perfect world was gone, and now she had nothing left. Except her hate. Back in the city, Ethan sat on the porch of the old family house where Lily had been born. The garden was wild now, the flowers overgrown, but it was peaceful. Grace brought out tea and sat beside him. "She'll sleep better tonight," Grace said softly, nodding toward Lily's window. Ethan smiled faintly. "I hope so. She deserves a childhood again." He stared at the stars, remembering the night Lily had called him, her small voice crying for help. The guilt burned deep, but now there was something stronger, gratitude. He'd nearly lost her, but fate had given him one last chance. Inside, Lily lay in bed, hugging her teddy bear. The house felt safe again. Before drifting to sleep, she whispered, "Mom, I think Dad finally heard me." At the jail, the warden's footsteps echoed down the corridor. "Carter," he said gruffly, opening Clara's cell door. "You've got visitors." Clara lifted her head slowly, confusion flickering in her eyes. "Who would visit me now?" The warden shrugged. "Said he was your lawyer. Wants to discuss an appeal." She smirked faintly, brushing her tangled hair back. "An appeal, huh? Maybe this story isn't over after all." But when the man stepped into the room and closed the door behind him, Clara's smile faded. The stranger wasn't her lawyer. It was someone far more dangerous. The days after the trial felt like waking from a long nightmare. For the first time in years, the mansion was empty of shouting, fear, and lies. Ethan sold it within a week and moved with Lily and Grace back to the small countryside home where his late wife used to plant daisies by the fence. The house wasn't grand, but it was real, warm, quiet, and filled with memories that hurt and healed at the same time. The morning sun poured through the windows as Ethan brewed coffee, watching Lily in the yard. She knelt by the soil, carefully planting seeds with her tiny hands. Grace joined her, smiling softly. "Your mother would be proud," she said. Lily looked up. "Do you think she knows?" Grace nodded. "Mothers always know." Ethan stepped outside, the fresh air cutting through months of exhaustion. "What are you planting, sweetheart?" he asked. "Daisies," Lily said, brushing dirt from her hands. "Like Mom used to grow." He knelt beside her, helping her pat the soil. "She loved these," he murmured. "She said they were flowers that never gave up." Lily looked at him curiously. "Like us?" He smiled, eyes glistening. "Exactly like us." For a few blissful days, life was calm. Lily began to smile again. She laughed when Grace taught her to bake cookies. She sang softly to herself while watering the garden. And every night, Ethan read her stories until she fell asleep. The shadows in her eyes were slowly fading. But peace had its own kind of silence, a silence that carried echoes of unfinished things. One afternoon, Ethan received a letter in the mail. The handwriting was unfamiliar, the paper expensive. He opened it slowly. Inside was a short note written in elegant cursive. "You can take her away from the mansion, but you can't bury the truth forever. The past is not done with you." No signature. He felt a chill crawl up his spine. Grace found him staring at the letter. "What is it?" she asked. He folded it quickly. Nothing important, probably a prank, but she knew him too well. "That's not nothing," she said firmly. "Who sent it?" I don't know, he admitted. But whoever it is, they know where we live. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He checked every lock twice, stared out the window for hours, listening to the wind rustle the trees. He wasn't afraid for himself, only for Lily. In her room, the little girl slept peacefully, her teddy bear tucked under her chin. But on the windowsill, something glimmered faintly under the moonlight, a cell phone left there by someone unknown. The next morning, Lily found it. "Dad, look!" Someone dropped this. Ethan froze when he saw the device. It wasn't just any phone. It was the same model Clara had used, the one the police never recovered. He took it from her quickly, hiding his fear with a smile. "I'll take care of it, sweetheart. Go wash up for breakfast." As Lily ran off, Grace noticed his trembling hands. "Ethan, what's wrong?" He stared at the black screen of the phone as it suddenly lit up with a message. "You think she's gone?" "She's not," and when he looked closer, the message was signed, Clara. Ethan's hands trembled as he stared at the glowing phone screen. The message was short, but every word felt like a blade pressed against his chest. "You think she's gone?" "She's not." He looked around the quiet house, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. Grace was setting the breakfast table, and Lily was humming softly in her room, completely unaware of the storm that had just returned. He quickly turned the phone off and slipped it into his pocket. He didn't want to frighten them, not yet. "Grace," he said softly, trying to sound calm, "I need to step out for a bit. There's something I have to check." Grace looked up from the stove, sensing his unease. "Ethan, you look like you've seen a ghost." He forced a small smile. "Maybe I have." Driving down the empty country road, Ethan's mind spun. Clara was behind bars. How could she possibly contact him? Was someone helping her? Kevin? No, he was still awaiting sentencing. Then who? He parked outside the post office in town, intending to show the mysterious letter from the day before to the authorities. But before he could get out, another envelope slid under his windshield wiper. No stamp, no address, just his name in the same elegant handwriting. His stomach twisted as he tore it open. Inside was a folded note and an old photograph. The picture showed his late wife, Anna, smiling in their garden, the same garden where Lily was planting daisies now. But what froze him was the handwriting scrawled on the back. She knew about Clara. Ask the lawyer who hid her will. Ethan's pulse roared in his ears. Anna's will had been straightforward, or so he'd been told. It left everything to him and Lily. But what if Clara had manipulated even that? He drove straight to the city, to the office of Henry Ward, the family attorney who had handled Anna's estate years ago. The older man looked startled to see him. "Ethan! It's been years. What brings you—" "I need the original copy of my wife's will," Ethan interrupted, his tone sharp. Henry hesitated. I don't have it anymore. Clara insisted it be sealed after the inheritance was settled." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "You let her seal my wife's will?" The lawyer looked nervous. "She said she had your authorization. She showed documents with your signature." Ethan slammed his hand on the desk. "She forged them. I want everything you have. Right now." Henry opened a file drawer with shaking hands. Inside, wrapped in a faded envelope, was the original will. Ethan unfolded it, his breath catching when he saw a final paragraph missing from the copy he'd been given. "To my daughter, Lily, I leave not only my love, but my protection. If I am ever gone, and she is in danger, there is one person who will know what to do, Grace." Ethan looked up, stunned. "Grace?" Henry nodded slowly. "Anna trusted her deeply. She told me once, Grace will see the truth long after I can't." Ethan gripped the paper tightly. Everything was connecting now. Anna's instinct, Clara's lies, and the threats that still lingered. He turned to leave, but as he opened the door, his phone buzzed again. The same number, one new message. "You're getting warmer." And attached to it was a picture, Lily, playing in the garden, taken from outside the fence. Ethan's breath caught as he stared at the photo on his phone. Lily, smiling in the garden that morning, completely unaware someone had been watching her. He glanced around the parking lot outside the lawyer's office, every shadow suddenly alive, every movement suspicious. Whoever sent that message wasn't just taunting him, They were close. He jumped into his car and called Grace immediately. She answered on the second ring, her voice calm but alert. "Ethan? What's wrong?" "Lock the doors," he said, voice tight. "Now! Someone's been near the house. Don't let Lily outside." There was a pause. Then Grace's tone changed. "Ethan, what's happening?" He told her everything, about the second letter, the real will, and the photo. Grace listened quietly, and when he finished, she said something that made his stomach twist. "Then we were right. Clara didn't act alone." "What do you mean?" "I saw someone near the property last night," Grace said softly. "A man in a dark jacket. I thought it was one of the neighbors, but when I called out, he ran toward the woods." Ethan gripped the steering wheel. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want to scare Lily, but I knew something wasn't right." "Take her into town," Ethan ordered. "Go to the sheriff's station. I'll meet you there." Grace hung up and hurried to Lily's room. The little girl was sitting on the floor, drawing a picture of daisies and sunshine. "Sweetheart," Grace said, forcing a smile, "how about a little trip?" "We'll get ice cream." Lily looked up eagerly. "Can Daddy come?" "Soon," Grace promised, packing a small bag and grabbing her keys. But as they stepped outside, she noticed footprints, fresh ones, large, muddy, leading around the side of the house. Her heart pounded. She tightened her grip on Lily's hand. Inside the car, quickly. They got in, doors locking automatically. Grace started the engine just as a figure emerged from the tree line, a tall man, face obscured by a hood. He froze when the car lights hit him, then bolted into the woods. Grace pressed the gas, tires kicking up gravel as they sped down the road. Meanwhile, Ethan drove back at full speed, calling the police and giving them the address. His mind was racing. "Clara's in prison," he whispered to himself. "So who's doing this?" Then he remembered the smirk on her face during the trial, the way she'd said, "You have no idea what I set in motion." Back in town, Grace parked in front of the sheriff's office. "We're safe now," she told Lily, brushing the child's hair back. "Daddy's coming." Lily leaned against her shoulder. "I'm tired, Miss Grace." "I know, darling." "Close your eyes for a bit." Grace stepped out to speak with the deputy inside, keeping one eye on the car. But as she turned to glance back, her heart stopped. The car door on Lily's side was open. "Lily!" she screamed, running toward it. The street was empty except for a white van turning the corner. She froze, realization crashing over her like ice. Someone had taken Lily again, and this time it wasn't Clara. 3 months passed. The world believed the story was over, the villain in prison, the child safe, and the millionaire father rebuilding his life. But behind that calm surface, Ethan's heart hadn't known peace since the day Lily vanished again. The police had found the white van abandoned by a river, no driver, no child, no traces except one thing, a daisy drawn in crayon taped to the window. It was Lily's way of saying, "I'm alive." Every night, Ethan replayed the footage from traffic cameras, following clues that led nowhere. Grace barely slept. The house that once felt warm was now filled with silence and grief. Then, one morning, an invitation arrived at Ethan's office, heavy gold paper, elegant handwriting. "You are cordially invited to the annual Carter Foundation Gala." It was the charity event Clara had founded, the one she'd used to polish her public image. Ethan almost threw it away until he noticed a small handwritten note on the back. "If you want to see your daughter again, attend." He froze. The handwriting was Lily's. That evening, dressed in a black suit, Ethan walked into the grand ballroom where chandeliers glittered and laughter filled the air. Reporters whispered, surprised to see him there. At the center of the room stood the new host, a woman with a familiar voice. "Welcome to the rebirth of the Carter Foundation," she announced, her face hidden behind a silver mask. Grace, who had come secretly with him, whispered, "That's her voice." Clara's Ethan's heart pounded. "Impossible. She's in prison." They moved closer, weaving through the crowd. When the woman turned toward the stage lights, the truth hit like a blow. It wasn't Clara. It was someone who looked eerily like her, younger, sharper. The woman smiled, raising a glass. "My name is Vanessa Ward, and tonight we celebrate new beginnings." Ethan's eyes widened. Ward, the lawyer's last name. She's Henry's daughter, he muttered. Grace gasped, the one who worked under Clara before the trial. On stage, Vanessa continued. This foundation was built on betrayal, greed, and lies. But tonight, the past will be revealed, and a child will finally come home. Ethan's pulse quickened. A child will come home. He pushed through the crowd, shouting, "Where is she?" "Where's my daughter?" Vanessa turned, smiling coldly. "Patience, Mr. Carter." "You'll see soon enough." Behind her, 2 guards wheeled out a small figure covered by a blanket. Ethan's breath caught. He ran forward, but security held him back. Vanessa lifted the blanket slowly. There she was, Lily, pale, frightened, but alive. "Daddy!" she cried, reaching for him. Ethan's knees buckled with relief. "Lily! Baby, I'm here." Vanessa's smirk widened. Touching, isn't it? You never wondered who helped Clara forge the will, who hid the evidence when it mattered most. My father. He paid for her silence, and she paid for his. Ethan glared. "Why are you doing this?" "To finish what Clara started," Vanessa hissed, "to take everything she couldn't." But before she could say another word, the ballroom doors burst open. Police swarmed in, led by Grace, who had been recording every word. Vanessa turned pale. "What? How?" Grace stepped forward. "Anna trusted me to protect this family, and tonight I kept that promise." As officers took Vanessa away, Ethan ran to Lily and held her tight, both of them crying. But in the corner of the room, a guard slipped out quietly, whispering into a phone, "She'll want to know it failed." And on the other end, behind prison walls, Clara smiled. The following morning, sunlight broke across the hills like a promise. The nightmare had finally ended. Vanessa Ward was in custody, her confession recorded in full. Clara's secret alliance had been exposed, her manipulation reaching far beyond anyone's imagination. Behind prison walls, she was now isolated, powerless. The empire of lies she had built was dust. Ethan stood by the hospital window, watching Lily sleep peacefully in the bed beside him. Her small hand clutched his, her breathing soft and steady. For months, he had lived with fear of losing her, fear of failing her. But now, as he looked at her, all that fear melted into quiet gratitude. Grace entered the room, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Her tired eyes softened when she saw Lily resting. "She's safe now," she whispered. Ethan nodded. "Thanks to you. You were right about everything from the start." Grace smiled faintly. "No, Ethan. Her mother was right. Anna told me once that you'd lose your way for a while, but that love would bring you back." He looked at her, emotion tightening his voice. She was right. I lost myself after Anna died. I thought building wealth would protect Lily, but it only blinded me. I almost let monsters destroy her. Grace placed a hand on his shoulder. "But you didn't. You fought for her. That's what matters." Later that day, Lily woke up, her eyes fluttering open. "Daddy?" "I'm here, sweetheart," he said gently, brushing her hair back. "You're safe now." She smiled weakly. "Did you catch the bad people?" He chuckled softly. "All of them." She tilted her head. "Even Clara?" He paused. "Yes. She can't hurt us anymore." Lily nodded, closing her eyes again. "Then can we go home? I want to see the daisies." "Soon," he promised. A week later, the 3 of them, Ethan, Lily, and Grace, returned to the countryside house. The air smelled of spring, and the garden was bursting with daisies, white and bright against the morning sun. Lily ran barefoot through the yard, laughing for the first time in what felt like forever. Ethan knelt by the flowers, placing a small framed photo of Anna in the soil. "We did it," he whispered. "She's safe. And I'll never fail her again." Grace wiped her eyes. "She'd be proud of you." That evening they sat on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the hills. Lily curled up beside her father, her head resting on his arm. "Daddy?" "Yes, honey." "Are we rich again?" He smiled, looking at the horizon. Richer than ever. She frowned playfully. But we don't have the big house or fancy cars anymore. Ethan kissed the top of her head. Those things don't make you rich, sweetheart. The richest man in the world is the one who never stops loving his child. Lily giggled. Then you must be the richest daddy ever. Grace laughed softly, tears shining in her eyes. The wind carried the scent of daisies through the air, warm and gentle. For the first time in years, Ethan felt peace. Not the kind built from money, but from forgiveness, love, and the strength of a little girl who never stopped believing in her father. And as the sun set behind the old house, the past finally let go, leaving only love to grow. So that's how our story comes to an end. And hey, my wonderful friends, you're still here with me, right? If you've made it all the way to this moment, then something in Lily's journey must have touched your heart in a quiet, personal way. Maybe it reminded you that love, real love, isn't about perfection, but about showing up, even when it's hard. Like the Stoics used to say, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Healing begins when we stop fearing the pain and start facing it with courage. Ethan learned that money can build walls, but only love can build a home. And little Lily showed us that even the smallest heart can carry the greatest strength. So if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs hope tonight. Leave a like, subscribe, and stay with us, because stories like this remind us that no darkness lasts forever.